This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
I build these communities for purpose, to lead people to God's kingdom, and then to sit in my assignment, which to have passion to grow people.
Welcome to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Get your free energy audit today. Go to ebebsolutions.com. Today on the podcast, Adam Roach. Adam is a coach. He's a podcaster. He's a speaker. He's a guy full of motivation and energy. One of my favorite follows on Instagram. I got connected to him through another podcast guest, and I'm so glad that we did because, man, we are like-minded. I just love his heart. I love the way he talks about his faith. In our conversation today, we talk about his beach chair moment, about starting with God, about the importance of health, recruiting, his real estate journey, all the things. So good. You're absolutely going to love this conversation. And if you do me a favor, share it with a friend. Maybe somebody who you know needs to lean in a little bit to what God's calling them to take that big risk. So now, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Adam Roach. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have speaker, coach, really entrepreneur extraordinaire, Adam Roach. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Tony, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited for the show. This is going to be fun.
You know, I was doing some research on all the things that you do, and between real estate and coaching and podcasting and the way that you pour into people, I'm really curious from a macro perspective, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
That's such a great question. It gives me goosebumps even to think about how we got to where we are right now. And I can give you a great story. So my father had been my coach my entire life. And he was an Olympic swim coach. I remember as a child, athletes staying with us, and he would train them, he'd coach them. And I used to think for the longest time that I had many older siblings. Come to find out that they weren't my siblings at all. They were just athletes living with us, right?
Wow.
And I was raised a good, fearing Catholic boy. And then I jokingly say, and not jokingly, but true story, grew up in Los Angeles in the business space for 12 years. And a couple of my business partners, one was a clergyman. He was a cantor. So he was a singing rabbi. And I got to learn the Jewish culture really, really well. And he basically said that I'd be an honorary Jew, so that was good. And then now I live here in the South, right? And in the South, I have to be a good Christian. So jokingly say that I've got a lot of bases covered in the religious space. So my father, he passed in 2019. And at that time, he had Parkinson's-related issues. I was really deep in the business world. I owned 3 Keller Williams franchises. I was in a coaching business space. I had a software company that was running. And I saw the impact that he had on so many people. And so I came home to Charleston, and we call it the beach chair moment now in the I Love Coaching community. And I sat in a beach chair, and I brought my journal with me. I brought my Bible with me, and sunscreen for my bald head, and a lot of water. And I sat there for 3 days straight and just mourned and journaled and prayed. And I said, God, I'm yours. I'm 100% surrendered. And just tell me. And I kept going back every day just to listen. And I would sit there, no music, no nothing, just all by myself, no kids, no family, no wife, me and the waves and the sounds all around me. And I finally heard. Day 3, I heard. And I heard 2 things. Who you surround yourself with matters. We've heard that so many different ways. And 100 million. Those are the 2 things that I heard. I picked up a full rack of ribs and went home and decided to smash all those and went into a food coma. And so it was at that moment in time that I had to really take a step back and pay attention to three things. Pace, right? The pace that I was going. My father died in his 60s. At that point in time, I realized that I'm in my 40s. And I thought, gosh, if I follow in his footsteps, I've got like 20 some years to live. And the pace that I'm going is not a good pace to quote unquote be living. And then posture, right? I had to think about posture. How was I posturing in being a servant of the Lord? Uh, I mean, I remember growing up Catholic, and we would genuflect going into the pews, and we would kneel down at the right time. And again, as a kid, I was just going through the motions because I didn't really understand. But now, in an adult space, I understand the kneeling component is full surrender, right? Full surrender. And the last one was people, right? So when I heard God tell me, surround yourself, right? Surround yourself, Adam. It wasn't a judgment moment for me. It was not a judgment moment for me. I was a majority owner of these franchises, and I just walked into my investor group and I said, guys, I, I, I've been called to surround myself with different people. And I believe that that's not you guys. And I don't look at that negatively. And if anything's going to happen today, it's going to be me buying you out or you buying me out. And I'm okay. I've surrendered to the fact that it's okay. If you decide to buy me out, that's okay too. It's okay. And so they did. They all decided to buy me out, which was fantastic. All three of them, back to back to back.
Wow.
And we had massive impacts. And I was not in any kind of judgment at all. And then I had to figure out the 100 million part. And so I started building the I Love Coaching community. And it's a community of coaches, right? So we're not a coaching company. We're a community of coaches. No one's an I Love Coaching coach. We're just a community of coaches that are leading a bigger life in the impact space, as I saw at my father's funeral. And so as I wrote the white paper on the community, it hit me. It's like, well, there it is. And I know I've been called to, the vision statement goes like this: to empower coaches to change and serve 100 million people using our what we call real coaching method. And every day I get to wake up, and I hated that it had to happen because my father had to pass for me to be even closer to this, as John Maxwell calls it, my assignment, right? John is a dear friend, and he says, listen, Adam, I've been teaching you for years two things. Number one is your purpose, and number two is your passion. 2023, I'm holding my whole life business planning summit here in Charleston, and he comes in, he's my keynote speaker, and we're in the elevator. And he says, and if you've ever been to a John event, or at least where John's speaking at a business event, this is what he does at the end. He says, listen, he'll read the audience and he'll say, there's one thing I want you guys to all have that I have, and that's a relationship with God like I do. I pray that you all have that, right? And he says this, he'll say, if you don't have a relationship with God, or if you want to talk about a relationship with God, just give me your business card and write the word God on it, and I'll call you. So we're in the elevator. It's 2023, and we're going up to the VIP event. And he says, Adam, I know in your handout it said that this is going to be your last year doing this, right? Yes, John. These things are a lot of work. They're expensive. And he says, I want to share something with you. You know, I've been teaching you. You have two things. Number one is your purpose, and that's to lead people to God's kingdom. And the second one is your assignment, and that is stepping into the space of your God-given talents and your passions. And he pulls out of one pocket. He says, normally when I ask the question, bring me your business card and write the word God on it, I'll get anywhere between 2 to 7. He pulls out of his pocket. He looks down. We're in the elevator. We only have 2 floors to go. So this was a quick conversation, but it felt like an eternity. He had 28 business cards in one.
Wow.
And he says, Adam, I know you said you're not going to do this again. He said, but you have to, because you've stepped into your purpose. You created an environment where people felt comfortable to talk about a conversation that is usually uncomfortable, which is a new conversation or a new walk with Christ. And you made those people feel comfortable enough and safe enough in the environment. You got to do it again. I was like, John, I'll do it again as long as you come back. I will. So that was a long-winded answer, but man, it's been 6 years in the making, and it's just something I get to wake up with every single day, and feeling his goodness and feeling his faithfulness.
There are a lot of Christian leaders who are listening right now who want that beach chair moment as you kind of dialogued. I think that one of the things that happens a lot is we don't often put a lot of effort or intentionality into how we discern God's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you know that that was God's voice and not just you starving for ribs?
Yeah, great question. I had a pastor mentor of mine. We've talked about this, right? It's like, how do you know that that's God's voice versus not God's voice? And two things that he said. He said the first thing is, if you're in an airplane and you're getting ready to go jump out of the airplane with a parachute, and all of a sudden you hear this voice in your head that you think it's God, and God says, "Take your parachute off, you can fly." That ain't God. that is probably not God.
It's not God.
Not God. And so that's the funny part of the joke. But the second part is he says you better surround yourself. Remember the 3 P's that I said: pace, and posture and people. He said when you feel that you are hearing from God, he says you better have surrounded yourself with the right people to go take that message, share it with them, and make sure the message aligns with Scripture. Make sure it aligns with Scripture. So God's voice when you're able to take that message and go share it with someone who is deeper even in their walk and deeper in understanding of Scripture and say, this is what I'm hearing. Where is it in Scripture? And when they point it out, you just had a conversation with God.
One of the things that I really appreciate about your story is the impact or kind of the emphasis on community. Mm-hmm. If anyone follows you on Instagram, they'll know quickly where you live. You're kind of a Charleston apologist, which I love. I love that. Because I love Dayton, Ohio. It's, the birthplace of aviation. Yep. And so between Charleston and then your coaching community and now the release of your new community, like the whole couple community, right. You're into building communities.
Yes.
Where's that born out of in your story? When did you decide, oh my gosh, if I don't build a community, I'm probably going to self-destruct?
Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to both those stories, right? It is purpose. Let's go back to purpose. Maxwell, I mean, he's in my head. I got a John voice and I've got a God voice, right? And John's voice is your purpose is to lead people to God's kingdom. And I'll go back to now 2024 summit that we had here in Charleston. It's a whole life business planning summit. And we focus on health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, giving, leadership. And it was one of those moments in there where a pastor came up to me who was in the audience. And he said, Adam, I don't know if you planned this. He says, but 2 people can have a moment. He says, though, when one person can connect with so many, he said, you create an environment, you create an atmosphere that God shows up in. And so for me, that purpose is community, building communities to lead people to God's kingdom. And that's what I heard at the beach chair. Go surround yourself. So as today I've had 3 calls with incoming coaches into the community, and my team hates that I do the intro calls. Right? They're like, that is such an inefficient use of your time. And we're on 4 continents now, the I Love Coaching community is. And that's the neat part. But the point of me saying that is I get to hear who I'm surrounding myself with, right? Could I go turn this on and have hundreds and thousands of coaches all over the globe into our community and be printing money? Absolutely we could, in a heartbeat, because I know our value is so good inside of our community. But that's not what I heard in the beach chair. Surround yourself with the right people, Adam. And that's it. So I build these communities for purpose, to lead people to God's kingdom, and then to sit in my assignment, which to have passion to grow people, right? To grow them.
I want to drill down a little bit on this latest venture the whole couple podcast, the whole couple community. You and your wife, Dana, have been working side by side. You guys are both very driven leaders. So as you guys venture into something like this, I heard you ask Jim and Linda McKissick this on your podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the same thing. How do you guys manage to work together in a way that feels like it honors God and honors your marriage? And, when do you turn it off?
Yeah. You use the word manage and work together like they're very fluid with Dana and I. That's not true. I'm going to give you a behind the scenes. No, I'm just kidding. We work really well together, and it's funny because before we even got engaged, I love coaching, right? I love being coached also. I mean, I think that was instilled in me a long time ago with my father. Though I hired a relationship coach. Right, I hired a relationship coach to coach me. I'd been married once before. To coach me to be a better man, right? To be a better version of myself. Period. Right. Period. Full stop. Be a better version of myself. And about 3 months into coaching with him, I was like, let's bring Dana into the mix. So he does. We do. And Dr. Kelly Flanagan is his name. And he's still a dear friend. He's actually going to be one of our special speakers in the community of the whole life or the whole couple community. And he says, all right, guys, let's point some things out here. We have two alpha individuals. The biggest challenge I can see you guys having is who's going to lead? Who's going to lead? Who's going to take control? And it was literally at that moment in time, Dan and I both looked at ourselves and we both put our thumbs out. We're like, well, I'm going to lead. No, I'm going to lead. Right? I was like, see, I told you. So we had to literally understand that for us to have the greatest impact, we had to let God lead. Right? We literally had to let God lead and get out of our own ways, stop being controlling freaking maniacs that want to have everything be so forward-facing, fast-moving, and rely on God. Right? Pray to God. Pray for the community. Pray for the organization to grow, that we can have the impact, and then talk our way through it. Right? Have conversations about it. Literally last night, we have a great nightly routine, and before the nightly routine began, we were working in the whole couple, right? We were working on it, and it was funny because we have to start the conversations this way. And I usually start with honey, and she'll start with the word Adam. So instead of calling me an endearing term, she goes right to my name, and then I'll go right to an endearing term. I'm like, honey, what specifically are you working on tonight with the whole couple? And she'll say, I'm doing this. I was like, great, I'm going to be doing this. So we know our lanes, right? Because we communicate. Though we're both led with passion for people and being led by God.
One of the things I've noticed about your story is that you've always surrounded yourself with high capacity leaders to learn from. You've hired coaches. You've spent a lot of resources on coaches.
Yes.
What's the number one thing you look for when you're going to hire a coach?
I almost go backwards. It's less of looking for a coach and understanding where I have gaps, right? Understand where I have gaps. So, for example, I'll even look at this book behind me, Buy Back Your Time. So I read that book. I thought, wow, there's a lot of gaps that I have in and from that book as it relates to systems. So Dan Martell is the individual who wrote that book.
It's a phenomenal book, by the way.
Phenomenal book. So
game-changing book for me.
So it's 2022 or 3. I can't remember now. 2022. It's 2022. Either way, I can't remember. 2022 or 2023. Read the book and shoot him a DM. Right. So my father used to always teach me, if I'm going to go to an event, if I'm going to go to in the case of swimming, I am to sit at the front of the room, take notes, and if I see someone that is having massive impact in their space and I want to learn from them, go introduce myself. Right? Go introduce myself. And that's what I did inside of the Keller Williams world when I met Linda, when I met David Osborne, when I met some of the who's who inside of Keller Williams. I was sitting in the front row, listening intently, taking notes, and then would just go introduce myself. And so going back to Dan Martell, read his book, thought, wow, there's gaps there for myself that are being plugged by his systems. I would like for him to coach me. So I shoot him a DM. And I learned this language, this script, if you will, from a mentor a long time ago. Knowing that they're busy, you always say, hi, thank you, fill in the blank for the thank you, right? I read your book. It was incredible, massive impact on me. Here comes the script. I know how busy you are. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're not busy, though someone of that stature is probably going to be pretty busy. So acknowledge it. And then I do this. What could I do to earn an opportunity to have a conversation with you? Question mark. Here's my number. Let's chat. That's it. And so Dan reaches out. He DMs me first, and then we chit chat, and then he calls me, and we have a conversation. And that was the start of a coaching relationship. Now we've been in for 2 years. And so I will find the gaps in myself first, pray about it, and then go find the right who's, either through referrals or through books or through any of those types of things. And ironically, Dan's coming to Charleston in the end of February. He's going to be on the I Love Coaching podcast. I got him a place to talk. It's going to be so cool to have him in town.
That's amazing. It sounds like your dad was such a huge influence in your life. The more I hear your story, and you guys kind of had that fight for a lot of grit growing up, living with athletes living in your home and just all the things that you went through. Your kids are obviously living a completely different life, right? And so my kids are the same way, right? Like they have a really good life. They've been really blessed because we've been really blessed. How are you and Dana developing grit in the next generation when you have the capacity to remove almost all the grit?
Yeah, great question. So, rewind. I went to Indiana University. I was a collegiate tennis player. And rewind even further than that, my grandfather was a massive farmer in the state of Indiana. His dad, a massive farmer in the state of Indiana. And when I say massive farmer, and massive to me means they had like over maybe 2,000 acres that they would farm. And so I got to see Grandpa doing that. I got to see my father off of the farm. So they lived on Main Street now. This was in West Lafayette, Indiana, home of the Purdue Boilermakers.
I cannot believe you went to Indiana and are from Purdue.
Yeah, well, I'm not from Purdue. My father was from West Lafayette, and he went to Indiana.
Okay.
There's a whole story behind that. But I got to watch Grandpa work his butt off, right? And I loved and hated going to the farm, right? Because Grandma would always, gosh, for whatever reason, and maybe it's only happened a couple times, but it sure felt like every time I went there, had to scoop the manure, right? And then she would always say that you probably have manure on you, so she'd make me take my clothes off and like hose me down, right? And so I got to watch that, and I got to see my dad grow through my grandfather, if you will, right? So on the swimming deck, I got to watch his work ethic be pulled from my grandfather, and then I pulled it from him. And so being a collegiate tennis player, I had to work hard. I had to work really hard. And I worked so hard that I attempted to play professional tennis and found out real quick that I was an American, not a European, was getting my butt kicked. And I was like, I don't like to lose. And so I'm in SoCal. And this is a no joke story. This is the late 90s. The first place I found the phone book was a place called Beverly Hills Tennis. And I faxed my resume in. So I'm a college graduate. I played some professional tennis. And they said, yeah, it speaks for itself. Come on in here. Let's see what you got. Indiana boy, Hoosier boy, living in SoCal now, going into Beverly Hills, thinking I'm going to teach tennis to the stars. And all they had was a clerical position open for $7.25 an hour, answering the phones. I had nothing else to do, right? And so I literally grit, just worked my butt off. And within 4 years, I was general manager and I owned 10% of the company. They gave me 10% because we had so much fun. So let's fast forward now to the Roach kids. So my son was born in California, and he would come to tennis courts all the time. Little itty bitty, 1 and 2. We got a picture of him. I don't have it here, of him holding a bottle and a tennis racket in one hand. And we just went back there this past year and we reenacted the picture of him holding a water bottle and a racket, but in the same spot that he was. And so he has experienced me working, and almost very similar, watching Grandpa and my dad, and then him watching my dad, and then me just work our tails off he and his sister, my daughter, they go to a tennis academy here in Charleston, and it's called LTP. And so they're homeschooled there at the academy. And so they play tennis 6 hours a day. Let's see here. They'll probably play tennis 5 hours a day and go to school 3 hours a day. And they
Wow.
start at 6:30 and they end at 6 roughly. And in between there, they have a few breaks, but they're both nationally ranked tennis players. And we give them a lot in that space, right? Because that's not a cheap lifestyle. Though we don't give them really anything else, right? They have to earn it. If they want additional rackets, they have to get a sponsorship. If they need certain things, they've got to earn it, right? They get paid. I pay them, right? Because we were both sitting around, all four of us. And my daughter was like, "Hey, Dad, there's someone at tennis that gets an allowance. Can we get an allowance? Tell me what you want an allowance for." Well, how about we make our beds, we do the dishes, we take the trash out, and we get an allowance. I said, I got a better idea. That's called standards. You're going to learn that standards are the stuff that is expected of you to get done. And so we're sitting there, and I said, let me ask you guys a question. What do you want to be when you grow up? Instantly, they both said professional tennis players. Okay, great. I didn't project that onto them. That's their world. That is a tough grind to get there, right?
Sure.
I said, okay. So we're sitting there. I said, how do professional tennis players get paid? And my daughter instantly says, Dad, that's easy. Sponsorships. That's one way. They also have to win, right? And so I said, here's what we'll do. So in the junior tennis tour, tour, we'll call it, there's level 1 is the highest level tournament. There's usually about 4 of those a year, just like the Grand Slams. Level 2s, 3s, 4s, all the way down to level 8. So we usually play level 5s and up. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so I said, here's what we'll do. I'm going to make a payment structure for each round that you win, just like a normal tennis player professional would. Each round that you win for each level of tournament. And this is how we'll do it. And so they were both bought in. No pun intended. And I kid you not, Tony, with the first 2 tournaments, they both win. Now, they're both level 5 tournaments, which means they both walked away with $75 each. But they won 3 of them back to back to back. And I did the math, and I thought, it might have suited me better financially to give them an allowance. But it was so neat because now they understood a dollar earned is better than a dollar given. Right? And now they love it. Like my son, he is very conscious of his money, right? He understands that a dollar earned is better than a dollar given. Where Amelia, she follows Dana. She likes to spend some money from time to time. But that's what we do right now, right? It's we're taking them to Wimbledon this year. We know that it's our job to put them in the path to experience the future, if that's what they want to do. We've taken them to the US Open now 4 years in a row. We stay at a player's hotel so they can see all the players and engage with them. Addison, my son, is a hitting partner for the professional women here in Charleston when they have the big Charleston professional tournament for women. And it's just super cool, right? So we push them pretty hard.
One of the things that I noticed when I was doing some research for our time together today is that you and your wife are really intentional about creating experiences for your family. Karen, my wife, and I have one of our 10-year, our 10-year vision statement is to create a home that our kids want to come back to.
Love it.
And I see that you and Dana are doing the same thing. What kind of intentional practices do you guys put into place as high capacity leaders to not pressure your kids and to create that space for them to want to come back?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Pressure is such an interesting word, right? If you really think about it, what is pressure? And I've heard sports parents say this over and over and over. I'm not going to push my kids. Okay, now this is just Adam Roach speaking. This is my opinion.
Sure.
If you don't push your kids, who's going to push them? Somebody else is going to push them. So why wouldn't they want to learn to be pushed by someone that they know loves them, and they could possibly even disappoint and they will still be loved, right? If they go out and get pushed by a boss and don't follow through because they've never been pushed before and they get fired. And now they come home because they need money. That's a problem, right? That's a problem.
Right.
And so Dana and I both love experiences, right? We've been following John now for 14, 15 years. I mean, we followed him with his exchange program. We've traveled the world with him. And those experiences have really developed us both personally, professionally, spiritually. And so we started this with the kids about 4 or 5 years ago when we first took them to the U.S. Open. And last year, we again took them to the U.S. Open. Amelia got an experience of going to see Taylor Swift, of course, and Addison got an experience of going to Indian Wells tennis tournament out in California in Palm Springs. And so we know, and we talk about this all the time, right? It's material things will be gone. Right?
Yeah.
My dad taught me this a long time ago. Material things will be gone, though experiences will stay in your memory a lifetime. And if you take pictures of it or videos of it, those will last a lifetime. So we know that experientially, that's our main focus. And we believe that if we do enough of those, and this isn't really the catalyst for it, though, we know that if we do that enough, they'll do that with their kids. And then we will eventually probably start to create family-based experiences once they are out and about and have significant others. But I'm not going on another Disney cruise. No, that'll be off the option of experiences. We've done that one time, and never again will I go here. It's a small world after all. No offense to anybody that loves a Disney
Sure,
cruise, but that's
yeah.
just not my cup of tea. Plus, you couldn't get Dana on a cruise ship. No way. No way. No way.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
Love it.
And I have noticed just from following you that you're a very disciplined guy, right? And so I'm curious, imagine you're sitting across from a leader who is leading at a really high level, but feels kind of overwhelmed with the amount of things. Maybe they're in that quicksand kind of mentality. I'm sure you've seen them 100 times. What are some of the disciplines that you're like, if you were going to coach them up, what are the disciplines that they need to start putting in their life right away to create space to breathe?
Yeah, great question. The first thing is I would take the word discipline out, right? And here's why. Twofold, and maybe this is my Catholic upbringing, is discipline to me was going to the confessional and confessing my sins, and it always scared the heck out of me, right? So I was being disciplined. And that's what my mom used to always do. Is she's like, listen, you do it again, you'll go to confession. I was like, okay, I won't do it again, right? No, in all seriousness, I don't know if there is such a thing, and I've heard this many different ways and shapes and forms. I don't think there's such a thing as a disciplined person. I think there's someone that creates great habits and then gets to an unconscious competence that then becomes and looks like a disciplined person, right? So the very first thing that I would tell someone who is looking to progress their life, someone that is looking to really move forward, and again, whatever that means, start with God, right? Lean in. And I'll give you an example about that. So the Bible app, right? I'm a huge fan of the Bible app.
Same.
Dana and I both are. And you know that the Bible app tracks how many times you've been in and what your consistency is and those types of things, right? And this is not no joke story. I can tell the exact number. So it's day 604. Day 604 of a Bible streak. My number was 604. Every morning for the last 3 years, I get up and I take a 30-minute walk. Right, every morning I take a 30-minute walk. I will not be on my phone until I'm literally just telling the world that I'm on a walk. Right, that I have habits, and that's one of my habits. But I go for a 30-minute walk, and every morning I pass a church. It's on the right-hand side. It's white, beautiful, old, built in 1858 in Charleston, well, in Mount Pleasant here. And I always say good morning to the Lord. And as soon as I do that, I look at my Bible app. Okay? I look at my Bible app. I'll take a screenshot and I'll post it on my story. Then I go for my 30-minute walk. And what I do on my 30-minute walk is I'm silent. I don't listen to anything, no podcast, no music. The phone stays in the back pocket. I'm not checking texts. I'm not doing anything. It's usually anywhere between 5 and 5:30 that I'm doing this. And I listen for 10 things, right? I like to hear that I can identify 10 things. As soon as I'm done, I start praying. I start praying. I'm that guy that's walking through your neighborhood talking out loud, and you're like, oh, there's that bald-headed crazy guy again, right? And that's just me. I'm walking and praying out loud. Now it's day 604, and my lovely, amazing wife, who is just she's my human, right? She's my perfect equal, and she's like, honey, I want to go for a walk with you. It's like, oh, okay, I'd love for you to. I get up at 5, right? And she's like, yeah. Can we do it at 6:30 or 6:45? Already my day's like off kilter, right? And I'm like, I got to do this for my wife. Let's do this for my wife. I said, okay. Now we've got this funny thing in our relationship, and it's either Adam time or Dana time, right? Adam time is going to be either early or on time, and Dana time it's Dana time, right? It's neither on time or early. It's maybe a little bit after, right? Honey, I love you, but you know that's true. And so I said, okay, I'll go for a walk with you, but let's do it at 6:30, please. I was like, I got things to do in the morning. She said, okay, fine. I look at my watch. I'm outside. I'm ready to go. Sun's starting to come up. I usually don't walk when the sun's up. I'm gonna walk with my wife today. It's 6:35. It's 6:40. I'm getting a little frustrated. 6:45. I mean, what could take so long to put clothes on to go for a walk? So she finally comes out, and we come out. Now I'm frustrated. Right? I'm frustrated. We come out. There's my church. Sun's starting to come up now. Now I'm a little discombobulated. And we take a right-hand turn to the church, isn't my normal path. And she's like, hey, let's go left. I'm like, no, wait, we go right. And she's like, no, well, let's just go left today. Now I'm even more frustrated. I'm like, what? You're 15 minutes late. You're taking me off my path here. But fine, let's go. So now I'm like huffing and puffing, right? I don't get to listen to my 10 sounds. I'm hearing her sounds. I'm frustrated. And we go through this whole walk, and we come home, and that was it. But I'm mad, right? I'm mad. And she's like, that was amazing, honey. Thank you. Thank you. Later that night, we're going through our nightly routine. She goes, I want to go for a walk with you again tomorrow. I'm like, okay, let's do it. But I said, this time, I'm going to go for my walk first, and then I'll come back and get you. And she's like, okay. Here it comes, Tony. Here comes the punchline of this whole story. I go outside. I'm walking by. Good morning, Lord. Good morning, Heavenly Father. I look down at my phone. I go to my app. I pull it up.
1.
It says 1. Tony, my heart dropped. And I was like, but wait, stop, time out. What's the favor here, right?
Right.
And then it instantly hit me. I lost sight of the Lord that morning. I totally lost sight of him. I did not put him first, because in our family, it goes God, then husband, wife, then kids, right? And at that moment in time, I had put her first, and not to say that in a negative way, but I'd put her first in my frustration way, right? I had my frustration way. So let's get back to your original question. What would I tell someone in the quicksands of it? Put God first, right? Let him be your anchor. Let him be your anchor. By the way, I'm on day 525, so I'm almost caught back up. But I jokingly tell Dana, I'm like, honey, you realize that I'm actually on day 1029. But
I had to, so it became a little bit of an idol for me.
Okay.
And so I had to take one day off.
That's good.
Yep.
That's really good. Yep. So go back to your question. Let's build the habit of building a relationship with God first, and then health second. Right? I'm a huge health guy. If you're not healthy, it doesn't matter what your focus, what your dreams, what your goals are. If you're not healthy, it's not going to be good, right? You're not going to have the motivation, and then everything else falls suit once the health is in place.
That's so good. That's such a great story. I resonate with it at such a deep level. I'm a 5 o'clock guy, and my wife is like, not.
Yeah.
She's early and she's super great and she's super productive, but she's just not 5.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's a podcast for another day. Okay, I know that the podcast family is going to want to connect with you all over the interwebs. I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, where can they connect with you on all the things? How can they be a part of your community or subscribe to your new podcast, which I'm so excited to get out into the world? How can we do all the things to support what God's doing through you?
Yep. Thank you. Adam R. Roach is every social media extension. So Adam R. Roach, there's 2 R's there in the middle. If you go to Google, if you go to Instagram right now, give me a follow and type the word God. I'll send you all my church notes from the last that I have in my phone here, right? Or if you just want the most recent one, I usually take a lot of notes at church and then I put them out there and say, just DM me God and I'll send them over to you. So happy to send church notes over to you. We are launching the whole couple. I don't know when this will be dropped. So though the whole couple, we are going to be launching that community February 13th, which is the day before Valentine's Day and my actual birthday. So
hey,
we're
happy birthday.
Yep. So for my
Karen
birthday.
and I got married on the 15th of February.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah. So for my birthday, I'd love for you all to join the community. It's going to be an incredible community. We are going to bring so much relational value right here on this wall. We have all of our guests. So the format of the whole couple is going to be, we're going to interview a guest live. Like for example, the first one is Dr. Kelly Flanagan, my relationship coach. And we're going to let the community be a part of that interview and then let the community ask this relationship expert coach whatever questions they want. So we're going to do that the first part of the month. That'll actually be the second week of February. That's February 13th. And then the 4th week of the month, Dana and I are going to lead a mastermind specifically on the topic from that individual. So in that case, it would be a relationship. We have an intimacy coach coming on. Our family CFO is going to be on there. We have a health expert coming on there that is specific to the HRV focus, which is your heart rate variability, and so many others. Brandon Lake, are you familiar? You're familiar with Brandon?
Oh
Lake, right? Yeah. His mom and dad are going to be on there. It's going to be super duper cool. So we've got so many. So we'd love to have any of your listeners join our community there. And all they have to do is just go to thewholecouple.com and you can see it all.
That's incredible. Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to take you back in time and invite you to give yourself one piece of advice. Except I get to name the season of life that you're in. And so I want to take you back to the end of your very first day at the tennis club, making $7 an hour, Beverly Hills. If you could go back in time, sit knee to knee with that younger version of yourself, look him in the eye, maybe hold his hand, and give him one piece of advice on the journey that he's about to go through, what would you tell him?
So simple. It's not about you. It's not about you. Stop. It's not about you. It's not yours. It's build your relationship with Christ and God as fast as possible. And just know favor is right. Favor is all around you at all time, right? Favor is whether it's a positive feeling that you have, a challenging feeling, it's all favor. Learn your way through it and stop trying to control things, Adam. Stop, right? Lean into your relationship, lean into scripture, and understand that the answers that you're trying to create and control are all right there. They're all right there. So stop trying to be the hero. There was only one hero.
Amen. Adam, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Thank you for what you give to so many. And I'm just really excited to see what God does next.
Thank you, Tony. Really appreciate being here. And however I can serve you, your community, your family, the answer is always yes, and nothing's off the table.
Congratulations by making it to the end of today's podcast. You are now officially part of the end of the podcast club. I'd love to hear from you. Email me your thoughts, tony@twmilt.com. Tell me what you learned in today's episode. How did Adam speak to you? One of the things that stuck out to me is his 3 P's: pace, posture, people. some good nuggets there. I absolutely loved my conversation with Adam, and very thankful for our continuing relationship as we lean in to what God's calling us to. As always, I'm forever thankful for you, our church, our podcast family. Some of you are my church family too. Both and. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you're here and we get to do this together. And if there's anything for me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Tony at twmilt.com via email or at twmilt.com. And remember, guys, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.